Welcome to the Road to Redemption podcast with your host, Cam Williamson. Each week, Cam sets out to shatter the labels and stigmas associated with mental health awareness by giving life lessons and raw overviews of events happening around the world.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to this episode of the Road to Redemption podcast. I am, as always, your grateful host, Cam Williamson. Fantastic to be back with you. Look, right out the gate, I want to thank everyone for their well wishes. Talking about the family emergency yesterday, that has resolved itself seemingly. Everything seems to be on the up and up there, so I appreciate it. If you don't know how the old YouTube works and you don't know how to read a title, today it would surprise you to know we're talking about first loves. Your first love, is it important? Nah. Right? Nah. I value very much love, and I value the idea of true love and romance. I, over 30 years, have had to learn that I had a toxic idea of what love was early on in my life due to a lot of the ways that I was raised, but also, in this episode, we are going to take full responsibility for our actions as ours, right? We're not going to blame other people, not our parents, not the person that we were in our first love relationship with, not people around them. We are going to look at this as a learning lesson and see where we can find commonalities, see where maybe that's still possibly causing us issues today, or it has in life, and then how we can move forward. But I think it's important to specify how little today in relationships we talk about the first time we encounter love. That should really be a foundational question right up there with, like, who's your mother, who's your father, who's your first love? Because, or, you know, what was that like for you? Because, again, like, to me, my idea of love, because I didn't have a mother and a father that were together and lived in a house. So, like, my first ideas of love were on TV, Corey and Topanga, and, you know, Alan and his wife, you know, the mother and fathers that were on TV shows, sitcoms. And I saw young love portrayed, you know, as you grow up and you stop watching cartoons and stuff. Yes, I watched the X Games, but I also watched, like, the teen reality movies and the, you know, whatever, and the Disney Channel movies where it was always somebody was running through the rain, you know, to chase down somebody and make this bold proclamation of love. And then when you get older and you start watching, like, rom-coms and shit and stuff like The Notebook and all that, and you're like, yeah, man, that's how I feel. I'm willing to do that. So, you know, in your first situation, I think it's important to talk about even how you met, right? In your first love, usually, and I'm sure some of you have different experiences, but usually it's a proximity thing, right? If it's your first love, you're probably not out experiencing the world and traveling to Europe at the age of 12 and finding some, you know, European guy and sweeps you off your feet. Like, I'm talking about, unless you live in Europe, or vice versa, if you live there, you're not taking a random trip to New York and getting swept off your feet in the middle of Times Square or something. It's like, we have all these wild ideas, but, like, in my situation, I met my first love at church. And it was at a time where my life was in shambles. My mom was going through a lot. She was just starting the process of going through custody with my dad, they'd been divorced since they were 2. But again, it started when I was like 12, 13. And she was really trying to find a foundation, I think. And my sister had made some friends, 2 girls, they were twins, and their mother and father were heavily involved in this church. And it became the church that we went to every week. Well, my first relationship, big, you know, serious one, ended up being one of their cousins. And it was a situation where we were just around each other, right? Where we hadn't been. So I came from Lincoln Village over on the west side of Columbus, and she was kind of from the countryer parts of life. And I was this skateboarding guy that, sure, I was a walking red flag, like I've mentioned 1,000 times, but I was an edge to an otherwise very pure and, it was a church. And I was not that. I was a skateboard and hip hop guy. So again, and she was kind of that. She was being brought there, I think, by her family to like get her into the church thing and try to save her and that type of idea. And I think, I don't even remember, like, I do because I'm writing about it in the book, but our first encounter was even weird because I was off skating in a parking lot. I wasn't talking to anyone. I didn't know anyone. My mom had just brought me to church for the first time, and I didn't know anybody, and her two male cousins were told, I think, by her, not her parents, but their parents, to come over and introduce me to them so I would feel welcome when, because the way a non-denominational Christian church works is you show up and you can wear hoodies and t-shirts and shit, so they act like they're real casual. They play like a rock band set for about 15, 30 minutes, and then the teenagers will break away to one room, the younger kids will go to another one, and the parents stay for the sermon. So they wanted to introduce me so that way I felt comfortable going back and going to the youth group, right? Which her, the two twins' parents, they were the youth pastors. So again, she was going to be in there, and all her cousins were now in there. And her cousins were like the superstars of this thing. They were like the cool kids in church, right? And also we met in the high school, in the local high school that my sister, her two friends, went to. So they were very familiar with this place. So they kind of like ran the show in the youth group. And I think it was initially just like me being me, kind of, where I felt like I had to impress everybody. I was kind of just trying to be too cool for school, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I keep putting my hoodie up just to kind of show that I don't give a fuck and like all this. And I think, as a young 12-year-old girl who's not interested in this whole church thing, right? I think that is just easy to go, oh, okay, there's something to that. Well, we don't say nothing to each other, and we end up going to lunch, which we did for years. We would go to a Mexican joint after church most Sundays. Her whole family would go, and it would be usually me talking to her male cousins and her female cousins, and all the adults would be down on the other side. Because, again, they knew, teenagers, they get it. Well, on this particular time or whatever, it ended up that I'm trying not to use people's real names. That's where you're getting a lot of hers and thems and shit. The girl, the first love, was sitting across from me. Her cousin was next to her, and then her two male cousins, one was next to me, one was next to them. And we started playing this game of paper football. I don't even know how we did it. We folded something up and we were throwing. Well, the adults were starting to get a little irritated with it. And that kind of fueled me up because I was like, oh, she's digging this. I'm the bad boy, that. So I'm being funny, right? Some point, people started to notice that like I was, I guess, rubbing off on the kids, and they were starting to act a little ways that people didn't like. So it was like, all right, hey, it's time to go, whatever. And they broke it off. Well, then the following Thursday, they would have a Bible study at her cousin's house. Now, this is a separate set of cousins, right? You've got the twins. The twin girls have a brother. And then that set of cousins has another set. And there's a brother and a sister and their parents. They would be very important to my story later as they homeschool me in my 8th grade life coming up very shortly. So I'm embedded in this family now, right? I'm fully embedded. Like, we're seeing each other on Tuesdays for fucking like small group, Thursday for a Bible study, Sunday at church, and then everyone comes to a barbecue Sunday after church. And again, all these people are always here. But to get to where I am in the story, after this initial luncheon, Thursday happens, first Bible study happens. We go to her cousin's house. We'll just call him I don't even want to use the letter, but like we'll call him the P's. We go to the P's house, and we go, and the boys are upstairs in the brother's room. So we hang out up there. We're playing video games. We're shooting hoops on a little like fucking basketball net that they have, and we're just kicking it. And again, I'm keeping this facade that like I'm this cool secular guy in a room full of nerds, and it, I think they get it and they understand that it's a projection because they're very much more emotionally mature than I am, and they're able to see through shit like that, and their parents are warning them about stuff like this with secular people. So they admired the fact that I was able to be that way, but they were in no way impressed by it, I think, right? So later would come, they were like, hey, do you want to go get the girls and watch a movie? I didn't know who the girls were at this point. I just assumed it was everybody I had originally seen. So we go down the stairs, and it's girl number one, that I'll call her, and her cousin, her female cousin, who's like her best friend. And one of the male cousins sticks his head in and goes, hey, yo, we're about to watch a movie. If y'all want to be a part of picking it out, let's go. And they come out, and it's this instant, like, weird thing, because I saw her, I wasn't expecting her to be there, and I don't think she was expecting me to be there. So we were like, there was already kind of this, like, strange tension at the restaurant. Now it's about to get worse because we're about to watch a movie in the dark as, like, 12, 13-year-old kids, and we're the only ones not related here, right? So there was already that, too. We were the only two secular people in this group, and also we're the only ones not related. So, we ended up putting on the movie, it's not called Only Hope. That's a song in the movie with Mandy Moore. I forget the name of the goddamn movie now. Mandy Moore is dying of cancer. I thought it was called Only Hope or something like that. Remember? Oh my gosh. This is a great movie. I can't believe I'm gapping on the name of it. Mandy Moore has cancer. She's dying. She meets a bad boy. Anyway, this whole scene of this movie fits the script that's going on here. We got a very Christian scene, and then we got this secular guy comes in and starts tearing everything up. It's, in her life, complicating things. However it worked, the movie gets put on. It's her cousin, her male cousin is all crunched on this couch, and her other male cousin is sitting on a recliner. I had put myself on the ground to try to, like, keep being casual and shit, cool guy stuff, where I'm laying like this and it's killing my fucking back and my neck is all shit, but I'm trying to be cool. I'm 12, 13, whatever. And finally, like, somebody had said a couple times, like, hey, yo, we can scoot over. There's enough room. He's taking up all this room. If he fucking chills, you could get up here. Kind of knowing that if that was to happen, I would be sitting right next to her, girl number one. And so this happens. And I don't even remember what was said. I just remember at some point we, like, start nudging each other like this. And then it's like, stop, quit, stop. Because we're trying to obviously be coy. We're sitting in a room full of our cousins and shit. But I don't really even remember why it, like, this started. And it was like this. And then all of a sudden we just locked fingers. And that was it. And we just sat like that, like, kind of covered like this. And I was like, yo, what the fuck? Because it was this whole thing, like, unspoken thing of, like, we were vibing with this unspoken whatever, I think. And again, there was probably some, like, small comments and me trying to be funny and shit. And, like, I don't know. I just remember that. So then I just remember she had wrote a little note. It was like, hey, if you like me, call me. And she gave it to me right before, like, I was about to leave this Bible study. And I called her as soon as we got home, and we talked, and it was like instantly, it was just like, oh, okay, so we're boyfriend and girlfriend now. Okay, bet. And then it was just that. Like, we had already kind of gotten to know each other's situation. Like, I knew who her parents were. I knew they were the ones that didn't go to church, and she was going. And we were kind of just going to kind of be around each other at the time. And it was this weird dynamic where we knew we were the ones that didn't fit in. But we were going to keep going because it was just an excuse to be around each other. So again, everything was already built in, like, secrecy, and we spent a lot of time talking on the phone, and we were the ones that would, like, fall asleep on the phone, and our parents would get pissed, and then they wouldn't let us talk to each other for days and shit. And, like, it is, again, like I talked about with the latchkey situation, it was a lot of just paid attention to time where we're able to be up all night talking. And, like, as kids who just finished watching, like, Cory and Topanga, and, your friends are being assholes at school, and your parents are stressing you out, and, like, all this stuff. And I write about some of it way more in detail in the book. But it's like, you don't think about how dependent you're becoming on someone for your own comfort. Not even in love, but just in sheer codependent. I'm counting on this interaction for me to feel good every day, right? And as a young kid, like, we went to the same middle school, so it was like we would meet up before class and we would hold hands and then kiss real quick, and something like that. And that was exciting, right? But then, like, days would come where she wouldn't come out, and then I would find out that she just wanted to break up, and then the next day she was with another guy or whatever. And then we would go back and forth in this, but it was always like everything over that was so temporary. Whenever she would do something like that, it was always like, I'm just waiting for this to resolve itself, and then she'll come back and we'll, do our normal thing again. And I would always just ignore the fact that she would go away for a while. Well, and then, like I said, I got in trouble when I was going into my 8th grade year. I got in trouble for arson. Me and a couple buddies were playing with fire. We snuck out on the 4th of July. We were playing with fire at my high school's football stadium, and we ended up catching one of the not used concession stands on fire. One of my friends threw a boot through the fucking, the PA where they sit up there and actually call the game, threw a boot through the fucking window. Like, it was a whole scene. It was bad. So I got expelled from the school district I was in when I was like 13, and I was homeschooled by this girl's aunts and uncles, not the youth pastors, but the P's. They were my teachers. I went to their house every single day, which was like 3 houses down from girl number 1's house. Now, again, they were not condoning any of this, so it wasn't like I was going down there and seeing her every day. She went to regular school, and she was still interacting with people then. During that time, we completely cut each other off. I don't really remember why. I think she just chose to be with someone else that was still going to school and stuff like that. And I think with the issues I had gotten myself into, her family probably didn't really want me around her. And, they were trying to still save me. I was this secular kid that was trying to fit in, but I think everyone saw right through why. And then, life happened, and we didn't see each other. She ended up getting pregnant at like 16 by one of her like brother's bandmates or some shit. And we didn't speak. And then I had a kid with someone when I was 17 and went through that process. And then her, girl number 1, and the girl that I ended up having a kid with, they became best friends after the whole fiasco where the girl that I had a kid with took off with the guy that I knew in high school. And he joined the military, took off with him. They became best friends, and it just became a big fuck Cam fest, which was like, I would just get like, the only thing I remember specifically is like they would show up at my house in the middle of the night and like shaving cream shit on my like driveway. There was one time I was walking down the street just having a shitty ass fucking day, and I hear, "Cam, you suck," and there's a milkshake just coming flying from a fucking car that I knew was my baby mama's. And it was like, man, fuck. And I could just see both of them cackling out of the side of the fucking car. And I'm like, shit on me. And it was like this whole situation where like my whole world crumbled in the span of like 5 fucking years, so young. Well, then, me and this girl get back together. Once her best friend now takes off to a military base, now she sees it as okay to come and be like, oh, that lady's a bitch. She did you totally wrong. Fuck all that. That was wrong. We got back together. We lived together. We got our first apartment together, and that lasted like a couple months. Her parents didn't want her to do it. They knew we weren't stable. She had a kid. The whole thing was complicated. We were kind of on and off all the time. But like, I never had a question that it was going to work when I was 18. It was like, yo, anything that we do, we always end up back together. So it's like, no matter what craziness you get yourself into, I get that you're this wild. She always wanted to be like, she wore everything Playboy and Betty Boop and Marilyn Monroe, and it was a big projection of how she wanted to portray herself. And like, we were big, and I don't know why, we like made our thing Elmo. So we wore like Elmo everything when we were like 13, 14 years old. But that was just like weird shit that we did to just be weird. We wore the crazy wristbands, and she dressed like Avril Lavigne, and I was like the Travis Barker type. So it was like this massive rebellion that we bonded over. And then again, so I understood when it was like she wanted to break the status quo of a normal relationship or whatever. Like she would just drop me like I was nothing, and she would go and live these, weeks or months, adventures, doing whatever she was doing. And it was like I never even processed what was happening, that she would just go away, and whenever she wanted, she would come back, and I'd let her, and I just never processed that. I was just like, yeah, I love this person, right? When really, you got to look and go, okay, that was my first serious relationship, but I loved that person in the way that I understood love at the time, which means like I would have toxically done anything for you. I would have, supported you even if or not support. I'll always support anybody, but I'm not going to tell you you're right when you're wrong. I'm not going to let you do things out of character and then justify it for you. I'm not going to enable you to act certain ways. I'm not going to let you be a lower version of yourself, right? Now, again, if you're different than me, we can differ on that. But I'm not going to let you be less than what I know you can be or what you are. Your hobbies and all that don't mean nothing to me. And again, there was some of that. Like, again, she liked Playboy shit. And I've always been a very traditional guy. So, like, the idea that my girl wanted to be a Playboy model was like, yo, stop wearing that shit. Stop doing that. You understand, like, ghetto bitches wear that stuff. Stop doing that. But it was like... And that was a real tussle that we got into where it was like, I should be allowed to express myself. And it was like, yeah, you can. But like, just understand how you're expressing yourself. Understand what people think when they see like a tanned Playboy bunny right here. It gives off an implication to people. So, and we can't act like that's not what you're doing. And then as I got older, it became you're doing all these things and you keep leaving to go be with other dudes. So when it was 18, we lived together. We had gotten pregnant. She ended up having to go and do a custody swap with her baby dad. I knew something was up, and I sat across the street and watched. They kissed, and I fucking just blew up. I mean, mentally, I think I just had a full-on breakdown. It was something where, and again, this is a story I'm writing. I went home. I drank a lot. I tried to contact her. Because of the fight and the blow up and the drinking, she decided she was going to go with her friend and this guy and go to where her friend and this guy, the town that they lived in about 45 minutes away, and spend the night there and talk to her friend. But I knew that this guy was about to be right there. So I just said, fuck it, I knew that the final thing had happened. I had finally realized who she was, what she was doing, and that I was an idiot. And I didn't know how to process all that at 18. So I just went and bought 2 bottles of Southern Comfort, a case full of beer, filled up my car, and started driving. I literally went, if you guys know what West Broad Street is, it's like just this forever going road that you can get on it, and you could literally drive to other states on it. And I was just like, I'm going to get on West Broad and just drive until I don't know anything anymore. And I'm drinking the whole time, and it got to a point where I'd ran out of alcohol. I knew I really shouldn't be driving, so I found this like $20 motel that had a bar, and I sat and I drank my ass off. I remember a guy telling me he just got out of prison for murder while I was sitting there. I remember sitting in the hotel, and then when I ran out of alcohol there, I went and walked to the closest gas station, and I was like falling over in the gas station. Thank God the attendant called the first person who was in my phone, which happened to be her. And she got my mother, her cousin, and her, and they drove to where I was and came and got me. Again, this is right after all this happens. She had like come back from the town she was in. This is like the next day. They're trying to find me. So they found me, got me back, bring me back to our apartment. They realize there's no talking going on. I'm apparently just screaming at her, telling her what I know she's done and all this stuff. And I refused to be around her. So they put me in my bedroom, story goes, I don't know how true this is, that I jumped out of the second story window of our apartment to get down to the ground so I could get out of the apartment. And then I just started running, right? So her cousin catches me and is like, yo, what the fuck? You just jumped out Stop, dude. You just jumped out your fucking window. What the fuck are you doing? We just got you back. Stop this. I think in the commotion of all that, terrified her. Remember, she was pregnant with our kid at the time. Terrified her, so everybody was like, we just got to get these two away from each other. Again, her parents live right around the corner from where we were. So they got her out of there. Then I agreed to go back up. When I got up there, she had left her engagement ring on the entertainment center. And I just remember breaking in my mom's arms. Like, I realized what had happened. They had already moved a bunch of her stuff out, so she had already committed to being gone, and it was like everything just became real, man. And, I remember sitting there going, this isn't supposed to be what love is. But I don't know how to picture my life without this person, because I'm 18, and since I was 12, every image, every dream, every aspiration I ever had her in it. And, so you're sitting there in a moment realizing, like, that's never going to happen now. But in the back of my head, I always had this idea, like, but that's not how we work. We always, there's always a lot of distance and silence, but that ain't how we go. Like Bonnie and Clyde, it don't make sense to everyone, but it made sense to us. In that time, I had to realize, like, it only ever made sense to me. And I was a joke. I was a clown to everybody who really knew. So, you guys know, after that, my life goes to shit: alcohol, drugs, military, first marriage, divorced. And again, we don't talk until you guys can see. We had a conversation about a year ago today, which is kind of why I'm having this conversation. And, we tried to rehash things, and we tried to be like, yo, what the fuck did happen that night? What happened for real? Not just what a drunken stupor doesn't remember, or the stories that have been told over the years to other people and then filtered through family members and stuff. Because remember, we were all one family. Like, we spent Christmases at her family's house and shit like that. Like, my parents bought her, like, aunts and uncles, like, Christmas gifts, and they bought our family gifts. Like, we were family. So this, like, deep-seated betrayal that I felt, on top of right after my 8th grade year, I was in a Christian rock band with the kids that I did homeschooling with, and, like, just suddenly I wasn't the one that they wanted in the band anymore once I went back to school, and they built this whole nother, like, super group, and they kept doing their thing. And then, like, again, girl number one left me, and, like, now I was exiled from this group that was church and, like, family, and I was left by myself. But again, it was because of my actions. It was because I drank and I drove off and I jumped out windows and I followed people and I watched them. But it was like nobody ever gave me any credit for the fact that I had reasons to do these things. Like, I wasn't processing that I was constantly being left and then manipulated back and left and manipulated back, because no one was saying that. They were just like, hey, let her go do her thing. She's allowed to do that. You give her space, and if you choose to wait, that's on you. And then when she comes back, everyone goes, oh, well, that's great. You guys figured things out. Glad, whatever. And it was always this, like, oh, Cam, just, it is what it is. You got to. So, and for years, I walked around thinking that I was a piece of shit and that I was no good and that I was always the second option. When really, after destroying my life with DUIs and alcohol and shit like that. But again, remember, I was 29 years old, still fighting the demons of feeling like I was inadequate and that I was not good for anyone. And again, some of that comes with the upbringing too. It's not all on the actions of this person, and again, I don't know what was in their heart. So again, it is their right to go be with people that they want to be with and have experiences that you want to have and go on young adventures. I guess the message is your first love super important? Yes, it's very important because it changes who you are and it changes the way you see life. But I would urge all of you, just because you have deep love for someone, understand that that is not always reciprocated, and understand that it's not always healthy, right? We don't control who we love, but you can learn what true love is when you look at situations that you used to call love and you see them for what they really are, which is toxic, manipulative, egoic, just everything not soul and passion and love centered. That looks different. Yes, it's fun. It's got a lot of ups and it's got downs and it's drama and it's chaos and it's, a lot of shit, right? And it has its place in young life. But as you get older and your patience for that type of shit goes away and you do find out what real self-respect is, you learn people that love me don't treat me certain ways. And like I knew that from a young age, so that doesn't give anyone an excuse. It just shows you how they really feel about you, right? So you can let people be exactly who they are, and you can still love them. Just because they don't love you back, or because they don't love you in the way you feel like they should to make it a working relationship. I think a lot of people could benefit from this who have kids. Hold on. I think a lot of people could benefit from this who have kids, which is, again, one person could have love for another person. Just because they aren't able to reciprocate exactly what that is, that should not dictate whether or not you love them. Love to every person is subjective. We are all willing to do and not do certain things for love. There's a lot of people, love is more a structure. It's a system. It's as long as you check these blocks and you're stable and you're this and you're that, well, then I love you and you can be in my life. For people like me, I've always understood life is messy. People make bad choices and regret them later, and they try to mend them. And again, road to redemption. I've always been on the empathetic side of going, no, I could see why you did that. Even though it hurt me a lot, I could totally get that, and I'm willing to move on past it. I was never able to then voice, like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get past knowing you kissed somebody at a party while I was at home thinking we were cool. You told me you was asleep. And I found out Monday at school that you were out fucking around all weekend. And like, I trusted you. I sat around watching my favorite shows, talking to my family about you, and like thinking about seeing you on Monday, and like, that's what you were doing? But again, I didn't start processing any of that until I was like 29. I just processed, oh, they picked other people. They chose to live other lives. And that's all because I'm not good enough. So yes, your first love is very important. Just be advised, it's not the end-all be-all. Because it's your first idea of love doesn't mean it's going to be your first real love. You have to be willing to experience all of it. Because if you're not willing to experience young love, then you don't get to the place where you make mistakes and you fix them and you grow, and then you get to experience mature, real love that is willing to withstand anything, that doesn't go out and fuck around and doesn't have a desire to make a soul connection that isn't authentic, if that makes sense. So with that, I hope this episode helped you guys. I hope it helped to make some sense in the ways of growing empathy for people that otherwise we could grow a lot of resentment towards. And again, it's all stuff that it doesn't eat away at them. They don't care. So you have to be able to take on the ownership of all your own actions, like the drinking and the doing all the wild shit. You have to take those and taking people back when you shouldn't have, and all these things. You have to look and see, where was I disrespecting myself and getting my idea of love fucked up, that I started thinking that love was being mistreated, and dealing with that and compromising or staying together for the kids because I'm supposed to. You're never supposed to be mistreated. You're never supposed to be abused. You're never supposed to be taken advantage of. Those are not normal things in love. So just let that be worth what it is to you. I love you guys so much. If you will, hit the thumbs up button for me. Hit subscribe if you want to see everything else we got going on. Hit that notification bell, and you're going to see it as soon as I drop it, baby. I love you. Hit up the Road to Redemption podcast.com. You want to see all the past episodes, Mad Mental Designs for all the merch that your boy's making. I love you dearly, and I'll see you in the next one.